a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay! Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. And boy, have we got something good to talk about today. We're going to talk about the shadow. What the heck is a shadow and why is it important? And why do we need to look at it?
Absolutely.
I mean, the shadow, I think we, as a society, we don't want to look at the darkness. Or we engage the darkness far too much and we give it far too much energy. So how does one work with darkness? How does one work with shadow in a way that can be playful and joyful and regain so much more energy and life force? Because I can tell you, if we are running away from the shadow, it's chasing us like around the block and it's eating us for dinner.
So I have two questions for you, and we'll address them one at a time. So I'll tell you first both questions. The first question is, when you're talking about shadow, I want you to explain that to us and define it for us. And then the second question is, since we are the soulful leader, what does that have to do with leadership?
Okay. Well, it's interesting. Let's start with the second one first, because if we cannot lead ourselves with love and kindness and look inside to the dark places, we will run from the outer all the time, and our life will become very small and restricted.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think that a lot of us, including myself, experience that. The glass ceiling became very popular, 10, 20 years ago. And we started to talk about that of like, what does that mean? We keep ourselves small based on our fears and our beliefs and all of the things that like we started to become aware of as a culture. And I love that you bring that up of, if we don't have those tools around shadow, which you're going to share us in a moment, what that is, what you mean by that, to have that in our leadership, we will remain small. And I think there are so many of us that are experiencing that and wondering, how do I break free from these bonds of like that I keep? It's like my own shackles. It's like, it's a beautiful prison. I have a great house. I have a great this, and I still feel like I'm living small. I'm not,
or that you're stuck.
I feel stuck, not living up to my potential of like why I'm here. What, like the big version of me.
Or why am I not as happy as I should be?
Yeah.
And I think this is a really key thing of, and this is the beauty of the shadow in some ways. I'm going to give you an example, because I'm going to get back to the first question that you asked me to. But the other day I went out for breakfast with a couple of my girlfriends, and I was traveling across. I live in one province, and I have to cross the border over into the next province. And there's a lot of protests that have been going on right now. A lot of hate, a lot of like projecting out of like hating the other. And I was coming across the border, and there was all kinds of protesters, and my heart just broke. I started to cry. And I'm like, what is mine to do? Like, I just like, really? Like, do we have to hate so much? Isn't there another way? And I was just so upset. And it was so great because I had an opportunity to talk to my girlfriends about it, because I was like, man, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm hurt. I'm scared of all these things that are going on. And one of my girlfriends said, she goes, God, Stephanie, this is not like you at all. You're always so positive. And I'm like, yeah, and I hate that too. That I have to be so dang positive all the time. It's like, sometimes I'm not positive. Sometimes I'm a cranky puss too. He started to laugh. And I said, it's like, it doesn't give me space to be sad or grumpy or hateful or afraid, because I always have to wear this persona of oh yeah, I'm going to see the higher version of it. And I'm going to be positive. And I'm going to be curious. And I'm going to be wondrous. But sometimes I just don't feel that way. Like sometimes I'm a freaking cranky person. I just want to be that way. Well, not really. I don't really want to be that way. But I realized that this was the shadow, and those protesters, because I was really reflecting about it, because the protesters, I was like, wow, there's so much hate.
Mm.
Why? What is that about it? And what I know about the shadow. So here's coming back to that first question. I was like, what is the shadow? The shadow is anything that we have neglected or denied in ourselves. We kind of squash it down. We don't
Right.
want to look at it because we tell ourselves it's unacceptable behavior.
So it's kind of like we stick it in the closet.
We stick it in the closet. Now, that's just not unacceptable behavior in the way of negative behavior. It can also be your gifts and strengths.
Right.
Because there's a lot of those things too, like having your gifts and strengths actually can make another person feel less than. So you might stick that in the shadows too.
Right.
So it's not just about right, wrong, good, bad shadows. A shadow is anything that you want to hide and don't want to show another for whatever reason. It's like the adaptations.
So if I learn something really easily and somebody else doesn't, and I like go, okay, I need to pull back from that because I'll make that person feel bad. And so I start shoving that part of myself. Or, if I am, too loud and somebody, I'm told all the time to sit down and shut up. Or if I, like whatever those things are that like you said, I love that word, the adaptations. So
you adapt your personality so that you don't make another. Exactly. And so what'll happen is that when we do that over time, eventually you just go, I can't do this anymore. And we either blow up or implode.
Because when we shove those sides of ourselves, they don't go away.
Oh, God,
they take up real estate in the dark parts. It's like in the unknown. It's like we pretend like they're not there. And this is why it's called shadow, is because we don't see it.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher at one point who had a great example of this, of when we stand facing the sun. If it's a bright sunny day and we stand facing the sun, it's all bright and glorious. This is what you were talking about, of like, oh, I see the higher this and blah, 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 right? And when we look behind us, there's a dark shadow.
Always.
Right? And the brighter the sunlight, the darker the shadow is behind us. If you think about like, when it's a really gray day and it's very overcast and everything is diffused, there isn't such bright light. There also isn't such dark shadow.
Yeah. So like looking at our shadow is so important, because Carl Jung said, if you don't go in and work with your shadow, you will marry it. Or you will work with it, meaning, you're going to have an employer or an employee or someone in your life that is going to actually play out that shadow for you. Or they're going to be a politician, or they're going to be like, seriously, that's what we do, is we project it out onto someone else so that we can actually see ourselves. So I love little children, because I think children are so close to the source. They remember who they are. When we're little children, like before the adaptations start to happen, really anchor in. There's that little saying that a children says, I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what?
Right. Yeah. So like if I'm a little kid and I'm like, look at you, you four eyes.
Exactly. And you're like,
respond,
well, I know I am. I know you are, but what am I? Kind of thing. Right. And it's like, it's so wise, because a child will say, but that's not who I am. That's how you might see me, because you are seeing me through your lens, and you're projecting yourself onto me. So when someone says, I hate so-and-so, they're actually disliking the very part in themselves that is in the shadow.
Right.
So they're revealing. So anyone that gossips, complains, hates, any of that stuff, they're actually revealing to you what is hidden within them.
Yeah. Because we disassociate. We disassociate.
That's
It's
right.
like it's such a painful part of ourselves, whether it's what we call the golden shadow, which is what we talked about, of like some
Mhm.
really beneficial part of ourselves that we've hidden away, and we see somebody else and we think, oh my God, that person's amazing. I wish I could be like that. Well, guess what? It's the same type of thing. I've
It's a part.
disassociated myself from it.
Exactly. And that's in you and you've disowned it.
Right.
And so to be able to go in and actually work with those parts and, you know, in these times, I mean, there's so much going on. Like, what is our work to do? Here's coming back to the leadership role again. So I'm kind of bouncing back between the question one and question two, but it's like, as a leader, if we don't know how to work with ourselves, we will not be able to work with others. So, how do we work with our shadow part within ourself with love and kindness so that it's not literally one taking us down, but also not getting projected out onto others, that we can claim back that energy?
So I think the first thing to talk about with all of this, now that we have kind of an idea of what it is and how it addresses, what it means for leadership, is compassion.
Yeah.
Because when we address the shadow, or when we look at it in ourselves, because one of the things you were talking about is when you see somebody and they're very angry, or they're this or they're that. It's like, I want to be like when I see myself and I'm very angry, judgmental, et cetera, because all of that is in me. Like, all of us have the shadow. And every time I point it out in somebody else, I'm also pointing it out in me. And that's like,
Exactly. You're revealing your underwear, basically.
exactly. Look at my print underwear.
Exactly. Okay, you just revealed what's being hidden within you. You
Right.
just flashed it. Yeah.
And we can be so cruel, as we are in the outer world to other people. I think
Mm.
we're more cruel
Oh,
to
yeah.
ourselves.
Most definitely.
And
Most
so
most definitely.
that's where I think that very first thing before you start even looking at this is to make an agreement with yourself to do it with compassion.
Yeah, like an observer, like observing it because, as children, we had to create adaptations in order to survive, in
Yep.
order to live and thrive. And I don't just mean physically, but I mean mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. We had to create a persona in order, like a mask, in order to hide those parts. But the thing is that we get so used to it and we practice it over and over and over again that we forget that it's actually not us. It becomes so familiar. So
Right.
it's like, who would I be without my hate? Who would I be without my positivity? Who would I be without? It's like, those are the questions that I had to ask. Like I said, the other day going across, I'd ask myself, I'm like, wow, I have created such an adaptation to be a people pleaser and to be positive and to find the higher story. I've trained myself
Hmm.
that, you know, I'm not hunting down the hate that's in me. And so, because there's all of those things in there, and it's like the part of me that hates getting older, the part of me that hates not, being as fit as I used to be. That part, like, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that I can be hateful to myself, and then I can hate those. Then I can hate those hateful parts. I'm like, that doesn't help.
Hmm. Right.
Instead of going in and embracing it and going, oh wow, you're really, really struggling, Stephanie. Like to
Right.
myself, right? And how
There's a
can I
part that's really, really angry.
really, really angry. And what can I do to embrace that part kindly? Not let
Kindly.
it, not let it spill over and spill out, but to also, and not to squash it. I don't want to keep putting it back in the closet and back in its back drawers. I need to also allow it to come out. And that's what I was doing with my girlfriends, the other day at breakfast of saying, this really broke my heart. And I need some help because I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling scared. And, they were good enough friends that they could hold that space for me to say, wow, we're not used to seeing you this way, Stephanie. Like, and it ended up unfolding into a whole conversation about shadows
Hmm.
and how we had adapted our like ourselves into the way. And like, what if we could then air those out in a safe place and find a new way of being with them that was like, okay, I know that I do this and I want to find a new way.
Right.
And yeah, like when you start to air it out, then you go, oh God, it doesn't have me like hostage anymore. Like there's like, it's like a little bit of energy releases. And that sometimes that's where the emotion comes out. That's why I
Mm.
say to feel it is to heal it, to let yourself feel it, because as soon as you feel it, you actually are letting it out. And I realized that these haters were actually helping me remember where I hate inside myself so much, and that what's really being called as forth within me is to love more. What would that be like? What would love do inside of me? Not outside. That'll come. I think we're so focused on doing it in the outer. That's the adaptations. Instead of practicing the inner leadership that we are talking about, is
Yeah.
like, how do I lead that part? And I say a part because I think it's not about all or nothing. It's like there are parts of me. There might be a little child part of myself. There might be a teenager part of myself. There might be a young adult part of myself. There might be a male part or a female part of myself. Like there's a whole bunch of characters that are going on in there. There's a whole
Right.
play that's acting out, you know?
Yeah. And the more you can step back and be observant, it's so powerful. One of the things, as you were talking about, I realized is that the agreements that we make. So you had an agreement amongst those particular friends of, I'll hold the positivity.
Yeah.
And each of them had an agreement of like, here's how I'm going to show up in this group of friends. And I think we can all like kind of recognize we're different people with different people. So
100%.
when I come to, say, for example, do the podcast, certain Maren shows up, a certain Maren
Podcast
personality,
Maren.
podcast
Podcast Maren
Maren,
shows up.
right?
Yeah.
And when I was a dance performer, the performer Maren would show up, and in my relationship with my husband, there's lots of different parts of me that show up, and we have certain agreements of I will be a certain person, right? I tend to hold the anger in our relationship. And so there are different places where different pieces of me show up.
Mhm.
And when I
Now
say,
that's interesting that you just said, I tend to hold the anger in our relationship.
Mhm.
Tell me more about that because I think that's fascinating. Like, what do you mean you hold the anger in your relationship?
well, I am the volatile one out of me and my husband. He is always even keel, doesn't say much, holds it all in. And so, because he doesn't, I don't know that this is actually true. And my experience is because he doesn't do that, I
Mhm.
tend to go to the opposite extreme and I'm more volatile. I'm the one who will have outbreaks. I'm the one who has to talk about, I'm the one, rah, 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 right? So, like,
Right.
it brings up my anger. So, it's like we have an agreement, a shadow agreement, that he'll do certain things. He's got his own shadow stuff. That's not like I could judge that. I got my own shit to look at, right? So what I look at is when that anger comes up of, okay, where are the parts of me that are angry that need to be accepted and listened to and heard, because those are the places where I don't feel that necessarily in my relationship. And I will say that it's not because of him, it's because of my projection onto him and our agreement between each other of like, this is how we'll show up with each other.
Mhm. So when one of you changes that agreement, it creates that whole system into chaos. It's like
It
finding a whole new dance, a whole new way of being.
it can. And that's what
Yeah.
I love. Like a while ago in the podcast, you had said you brought this to your friends and they're like, we're not used to you like that. What does
Yeah.
that
I
mean?
changed the whole agreement.
You changed the whole agreement because you're like, I'm not showing up as positive Stephanie today.
Yeah.
And they're
And
like,
I can tell you
what
that
do
was
I
hard
do?
for me because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, here's all the itty bitty shitty committee that goes on inside of myself. Oh, if I'm not positive, I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be abandoned. You know, I'm going to be judged. I'm being the negative Nelly here right now. And
Right.
I'm not like that. And that's not who I want to be. Oh my God. It went on and on and on. But I had to like really hold love within part of myself. And it's like, and there's a part of me that really is hurting right now.
Mm.
And it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to show that, because it's a part of me. It's not all of me.
Right.
And it's tired of trying to be positive all the time and trying to squash down the part that is afraid, that is hurting. And what would happen if I let it out, and let it out consciously rather than reactively? That's why I say we either implode or we explode. Like, those are not healthy ways.
No.
Like, I know it either comes out in physical pain in our body if we don't address the shadow. It's like often those are needs and wants and things that we've squashed down in there, or it comes out and we attack another person, or we run away. We avoid them. We cut them out of our lives. It's the burn, cut, poison method again, and I'm like, what if there's another way? Because I truly believe as leadership, there are other ways
Yeah.
that we can transcend and include those parts.
And when I look at it in my relationship of, who would I be if I weren't angry?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that's a different way of looking at it. Right.
That is such a
And
great question. Who would you be?
right. Just like you ask yourself, who would I be if I wasn't like being
Yeah.
positive? And it's not that you're not going to be positive. It just is recognizing that that particular positivity is an adaptation and not
And an
true.
attachment. It's an
Yeah.
attachment. And the minute you're attached to anything, I don't even care how good it is. The minute you're attached to anything, you're going to suffer.
Mm.
Instead of allowing, like a stream, a river flowing through you, to
Mm.
let it move through you. That's, again, emotion, energy, emotion. Let it flow through you. What if you could let it move through you and not be attached to it? It would clean you out
Mm.
and lift you up, actually, rather than try to like squash you underneath, and you have to hold your breath and try to hope to God that you're going to survive. Because that's where most of us are, in survival mode, like barely with our noses above the water, like trying to breathe.
Yeah. And it's like we're seeing that so much in our society right now. And so the thing that we're pointing to for us
Mhm.
and for everybody else out there is the more we can do it for ourselves, the more it impacts society. And the reason, there is a very logical reason for it, is that when we don't allow those things to flow through us,
Mhm.
then the energy that we have, that's our energy, my energy, gets projected out because I haven't owned. When I own my shadow, I get the energy from my shadow. I
Oh,
get
yeah.
all that energy that I've stuffed into the basement and stuffed away and said, it's not mine, it's not who I am, blah, 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 right? Instead, now when I start to own those pieces back
Mhm.
and say, who would I be if I weren't angry? And I actually looked at that part of me that I stuffed, I get that energy back. When I don't look at that, I hand that energy over to the collective. And so now we're seeing all of this anger at a large scale. I want to take
Mhm.
that back. I want to stop giving energy to that.
So it's interesting because a little while ago we talked about the let them theory, let them, let me
Mm,
kind of aspect. And we're talking, what you and I are talking about right now is almost like the next level up.
yeah.
It's like, these are the things I cannot control. I cannot control that there are protesters, or there's negative things, or my husband isn't behaving the way I want him to, or whatever we have it. But what we can control is our reaction to it,
Mm.
and not by stuffing it. I think that's the old way, is that we stuff it, or we just go, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, we just throw it out. It's
Or
not
shame
me,
it.
or
I
shame it.
shouldn't feel that way.
Right. Instead of saying, okay, wait a minute, what if I use this as a practice of the self discovery and self awareness? Like, someone doesn't invite me to a party, and they're all a whole bunch of my friends. And I'm like, at first I'm hurt. What if I actually let myself feel it, not react with it, but just let myself feel it? And then I realize, wow, what is this really about? It's about belonging, feeling included. Okay, where am I not including myself inside myself? Where am I rejecting a part of myself and not including all those parts to come forth within me? If that makes sense, like the itty bitty shitty party that's in there. It's like, where am I rejecting that? And can I embrace that and listen to them and give them space? See, I look at it as an internal relationship, not so much as the external,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the internal relationship that actually is the root system to the external relationships. That if you can take it internal and feed your roots, feed all of that thing, then your tree above ground is going to flourish and blossom and bear fruit.
I love that analogy because I mean, we can all picture a tree. If we cut off 3/4 of the roots, 3/4 of the tree is going to die,
Right.
if it lives at all. And yet that's what we're doing to ourselves without even realizing it. We think that we're not, that we're full beings. And we're literally walking around with about 1/10 of our roots, which means we're only taking up that much energy and that much feeding ourselves. And that's the only
Yeah.
amount that we can. No wonder we wake up and we need caffeine, and then we go to sleep when we need, a drink, and like just.
Well, we're so physical focused, meaning the outer. We're looking at the product. We're looking instead of the process, the root system, that we're constantly focused on the outer
Right.
as our value and our worth and who we are. Instead of going, wait a minute, what is feeding this? Is there any root system? Is what's going on beneath the surface? So what I mean by that, it's like, the outer is really such a small percentage, like 20%. There's the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the ethical, the all of those root system. What is the root system? And if you have a strong inner rootedness, and I mean, we can relate that in the way of community, of having a strong rootedness. If I didn't have my two girlfriends, I mean, I've built a relationship with them. I mean, one of them is I've known all my life. So a long, long time. The other one I've known since high school. So more than half of my life. If I hadn't built a strong root system with them, I wouldn't have felt safe enough to show them that inner stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
so
would
true.
they would not have built that relationship with me to stay present with it.
Mm.
But those are our roots, and you got to nourish them. And I think that's the shadow. We don't see the root system. We don't see the shadow. We just see what's out there.
And I know, if you're listening, you might be thinking, gosh, I don't have that type of a root system, meaning out there in the society. And that's okay, because there's a process of building it inside of yourself as well. I'm going to read a poem by the mystic Rumi called The Guest House. And Stephanie mentioned it earlier, of like letting the things move through you instead of getting attached to the I feel angry, I feel this, or because we identify with it. I
Mhm.
am angry. I am fill in the blank. He is arrogant. I am happy. You know, starting one of the places to start to build that root system is to stop identifying with those things, whether at either extreme, the happy or the sad, the good or the bad, whatever the judgment is, to let go of the
Mhm.
judgment and literally just feel the things. So this is the poet Rumi. It's called The Guest House, and I will put it in the show notes. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
What a practice. That poem is so beautiful to me.
Yeah, it is a practice. And when you look at it
Yeah.
as not just words, as you look at it as a practice
Mhm.
to keep coming back to, come again. That's another Rumi poem, right? Come again.
Mm.
That we're not going to do this perfectly. We're not expected to. We've had eons of being trained to be a certain way. And then it's the untraining. We're in the unlearning process of the up leveling process of, oh, that was just something I learned, not someone that I am.
Yeah.
So
So
that is the way to start building the root system within yourself, that inner leadership, the soulful leadership. And if we can support you in any way, we're happy to.
This has been great.
It has been.
Let those petty tyrants out there, let them help you look inside with love.
Yes. Start it all with compassion and love. And like I said, if we can support you in like reminding you that it's all come from compassion and love, just give us a poke, whether it's a call or an email. You can find us on Facebook or on LinkedIn at The Soulful Leaders, also on YouTube. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks on the Soulful Leader podcast. Thanks for joining us.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.